How? To pass through time, you needed a hole in the space-time continuum, or a wormhole that linked to a different time and place, or you needed to somehow bend space-time and take a shortcut. Wormholes were more or less fixed to specific points in space-time, so the Bermuda Triangle was probably one of those. But the Arrow-Cross House was different. We'd been thrown super far back, to England in 1920 in a different history of the universe, and it had used poor dead Tsukumajuku to take Narancha and me from Budogoka Academy campus to a spaceship orbiting Mars. Thinking about it, how much free will had Tsukumajuku had? When he appeared before me, he'd seemed to know I was there. "Hey, I'm your instrument. Someone needs you. I'll take you to him." And after he took me to the H.G. Wells, he'd known there would be a spaceship and wasn't surprised by it at all. "Whoops, brought an anomaly along, but it all means something, I'm sure. Bye." If he'd been just a victim, caught up in a time slip and flung here and there, he'd have been confused by it all. He'd never have noticed that Narancha came along. He'd been quite lost the night before when he'd arrived in Nishiak Katsuki. "Pardon, que pasó? ¿Dónde estoy?" That night, Tsukumajuku was not only super confused, he was even a bit frightened. But after he died when he was taking us to Mars, he'd understood everything, was totally comfortable in his role, and even had time to give me the kind of smirk I could only take as a challenge. By then, he wasn't just aware of what was going on. Tsukumajuku was controlling the time travelling of his own free will. If Arrow-Cross House was the device to bypass space-time, Tsukumajuku had learned to use it. Arrow-Cross House could bend space-time and create shortcuts. It could choose a place and time and send us there. It could even act like a delivery service, picking someone up and putting them where they needed to go. But how? How was it bending space-time? There were two ways modern science was aware of: speed and gravity. Giant celestial bodies like suns and black holes could bend the fabric of space-time. Light didn't proceed in a straight line past them. But in Morio, nothing with that powerful a gravitational field existed or could exist inside the house. After all, to increase gravitational pull, you had to increase mass. Morio and the Arrow-Cross House were too small to contain something that large. To compress the volume of that mass required even more power, and if they succeeded, they'd just end up with a black hole. Could Tsukumajuku control something like that? He wasn't even a stand master. If Arrow-Cross House's stand power was having a black hole, there'd be more to what it did than just time travel. Things would disappear, be crushed, and it would absorb all light and sound. I'd been in Arrow-Cross House and sensed nothing so chaotic. It was quiet, calm, elegant and relaxed, like you'd expect the home of a working author to be. Nothing I'd seen suggested there could be a black hole hidden somewhere. Absorbing? No, that wasn't right, I realised. It couldn't just absorb. Tsukumajuku hadn't just travelled through time, he'd gone back to Arrow-Cross House afterward and died. If he'd just been absorbed, he could never have gone back. Maybe there was a way to reverse the gravitational pull, but before considering that, I had to reconsider my initial premise. If Arrow-Cross House was the device, could I determine the function from the construction and design? Arrow-Cross House was a functional compass, but the core of it was still the cube house. The Tesseract. The house was made of 8 square rooms that allowed you to move indefinitely in any direction. The key quality lay in that infinite nature, not in any gravitational compression. Okay then, I was about to start going over the idea of using speed, when I realised something. Damn it, I thought. I'd already peered directly into the heart of the cube house's device. When we'd gone to Kishibe Rohan's study with Grand Blue, we'd opened the door in the house and realised if we went 4 rooms down we'd end up where we started. Later on, when they were about to open the door again, Sugimoto Reimi warned me not to fall straight down. We'd all instantly pictured what would happen. The room below the room below the room below this one was the study, so if I broke through all 3 I'd fall forever. What would happen then? If gravity increased my fall speed here, I'd fall until I hit terminal velocity. That was as far as I'd thought through it then, but perhaps that velocity wouldn't be terminal, but instead bend space-time. It already had, when we fell out of the sky and landed on the Arrow-Cross House. We'd gone through the ceiling of the cube house, smashed Rohan's desk to bits, burst through the door underneath it, and the floor below, and gotten lost in the infinite loop. Normally air resistance would have been slowing us down, but inside the cube house we'd sped up until we were going fast enough that time and space bent around us. And then what? Which direction had it bent? Without knowing it was a time travel device, we'd simply fallen. No conscious will was at work. We didn't consciously want or try to go anywhere. If the device was activated but received no orders and we just kept going faster and faster, how would the device handle that? If the device could be controlled at will, and there was no will present within the device, it must take input from outside sources. The device would then connect us to the will of someone far away. That was it. The infinite vertical shaft at the heart of the hour-cross house was a device to bend space-time. If the people falling through it wanted to go somewhere, it could send them there. But if the people falling expressed no such desire, then it could pick up on the desire of someone outside. Sukumajuku knew this, which explained why he'd said, "I am your instrument." I'd caught up with Sukumajuku. All of this took about 30 seconds. Bucciolati was still going on about what a piece of shit Diavolo had been, and didn't seem to have noticed that I'd gone quiet. What he was saying made a certain amount of sense, but he was a gangster, and didn't understand. "Bucciolati," I said, "I can't move forward if I don't solve the mystery. That's the nature of a detective." "Oh," he said, and then said what anyone with a deep understanding of human work and duty would say. "In that case, go ahead." "Yo, we can see London," Narantia said, so I hung up the phone and went up to the bridge, and saw a huge city covered in rubble from the fierce battles fought there. "This must be Desolation Row," the priest said, collecting yet another of his simples. "We've been waiting for you, our very own angel, Enrico Pucci," came a voice. We turned, and two men stood on the deck of Das Boot as it moved through the forest. I recognised one of them, a well-dressed man with distinctive swirls of hair. "I am the President of the United States, Funny Valentine," he said. This wasn't Funny from 2012, but the Funny from this world. He was young, but looked exactly like the Funny and the funnier and the funniest I'd seen on TV. Funny ignored us, speaking only to Pucci, who appeared to be at a loss. "You look surprised, Father. As a man of faith, you didn't think to be called an angel yourself? Be that as it may, all that remains is one rhinoceros beetle, two singularities, and a spiral staircase. For the last rhinoceros beetle, if you follow the bank of the Thames to the south, you'll soon see it. Or perhaps since I'm here, you already understand. We've come to meet you, to take you to the island that will become the centre of the world. It is, of course, in our United States. Now and when you were there." "And there is a church." "Exactly. There is also a church named for that which we serve. Trinity Church." "Indeed. There are 3 churches of that name in America, but only one on the island." "New York. Manhattan Island." "Precisely. I've just been to see it. The 4th rhinoceros beetle is Manhattan." Great Britain was headed west, the mouth of the Thames at its fore. It had crossed the Atlantic and clambered up onto the United States. The giant insect's countless legs straddled the Hudson, half in Connecticut and half in New York. It headed north into New York Harbour, the tips of the skyscrapers at eye level. But Great Britain showed no signs of slowing down. "But Manhattan's not a real rhinoceros beetle, I'm afraid," Funny said. Great Britain's southern extremity stepped up onto Manhattan, tackling the skyscrapers and flattening the island. "As president, I find this situation regrettable, but to build greater prosperity for America, it's time to cut the country loose. This is, well, a sort of ritual, an initiation." Thanks to the wall surrounding Great Britain, we couldn't hear the sounds of it or feel the vibrations, but we knew it must be a living hell down below. Narantia and Penelope were as shaken as I was. All 3 of us must have looked ready to faint. "We must move forward, Father Pucci," Funny said. "Have you found the singularity yet?" "Huh?" "Think! What is a singularity but a point? A point is but part of a line. A line is a connection. And what is a connection?" Pucci stepped forward to stand beside me. "Time," he said. "Time's relation to man." Funny cried. "Well put. 2 are enough. And what are the 2 times?" "Time I have lived through, and the time I'm living." "Yes, that's it. And the 2 that connect them?" "Myself and God, is what I would have said, but judging from your arrival, that may not be the case." "In which case, me and myself." "You have it! You are connected to yourself, Father Pucci, as am I to me." You know me well, but not this me, correct? Correct. But we are linked. How so? I am me, but at the same time I'm not. How could this be true? I believe you know the answer, Father Pucci. Yes, I do. Please share. Because I could make a connection. Because I can't make the connection. Because what I create is the spiral staircase. Very good. Just one last thing. Allow me to introduce the Secret Emperor. Funny gesture to the man beside him, a tall, muscular man brimming with power. I'd seen him before, in the photo Cars projected. The sinister man floating in the air above Cape Canaveral, the adopted son of the Joestar family, the one who'd botched a train robbery. Dio Brando. You may love me, Enrico Pucci, Dio said. There was a crown of thorns around his head, holes in the hands he held out, and his bare feet. When he saw this stigmata, Pucci wept. My lord! And Pucci began to cast aside his stand. Arrows appeared all over Whitesnake's body, and Pucci began to levitate. In that instant, I could no longer stand normally on the desk of Dos Boot. Unless I focused my mind on Pucci as he floated, I didn't feel like I was standing upright, didn't feel balanced. Everyone else was staggering, their gaze focused on Pucci's head, like a shot from this music video for Smooth Criminal. I could see funny Valentine's coat flapping, though there was no wind. Pucci had become absolute up, the centre of all things, and everything radiating out from around him was now down. Dio and Cars alone stood normally, as straight as they ever had, but not because his force wasn't acting on them. Just they both possessed the physical strength needed to ignore the change in gravity. Cars' long hair and Dio's cape were pulled towards Pucci, just as we were. The higher Pucci rose, the closer we came to what had originally been bolt upright. Pucci was the centre of gravity, and looking up at him, one thought ran through my mind. Gravity. If you could control it at will, you could bend space and time. And that's why Pucci was killing his own stand. With the arrows covering every inch of it, cracks were beginning to run across the surface of Whitesnake, and as it shattered, a clockman on a two-legged horse emerged. So this is made in heaven, Pucci said, enthralled. Cars stood behind us, paying Pucci no heed. His eyes were on Dio, who met his gaze, his smile as brazen as before. Now, let us go to heaven! Pucci cried, and a moment before he activated Made in Heaven, Dio held up his hand, and the wall of air that covered Great Britain formed the upside-down upper half of a giant buoy, which rose up and looked down at us. Its eyes were open, but it had no eyes. This was a combined version of all the Antonio Torreses that Penelope had made the wall from. Hanging upside down from the sky wall, it reached out its massive hand and snatched Pucci out of the air. Dio looked up at Pucci and said, Don't be in such a rush, gutter trash. Your job is to sweep and clear the outside. How mean! Penelope yelped and clapped her hands over her mouth. But trapped in the giant's hand, Pucci's expression was as rapturous as ever. Fused Antonio Torres swallowed him whole, sending him outside the armour. Normal gravity returned, and above us, Pucci activated Made in Heaven. Outside the rhinoceros beetle called England, time sped up. The sun and moon whipped round us, but the zombies were hiding in shadow and would not die. In the blink of an eye, the universe ended and began again. Trembling, Penelope reached out and took hold of my sleeve as I started counting universes. Outside England, in Antonio Torres' belly, the universe looped 36 times, bringing the island of Great Britain to the 2012 we'd come from. We landed just in time to flip Morio over. We were back. Had our 6-month journey back from Mars taken only 4 hours because of Pucci's stand too? I asked Cars.
Yes, but not quite,
Cars said.
That man was in a small box with a much more complicated time flow compressed within, at the same time as he was on the spaceship with us.
A small box?
Somewhere beyond the ends of the world.
What? I didn't get this at all. What was Pucci doing there?
Killing a man.
That cleared up nothing, but when I looked up out of the rhinoceros beetle, Pucci was no longer floating above us. End of chapter 14.